What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and today we're going to be talking about the Senior Bowl and some of the wide receivers who've been standing out at the Senior Bowl because there's a long list of talent down in Mobile, Alabama right now, and a lot of receivers have been turning heads. As you guys know, I'm a huge Xavier Legette fan. Alex is a huge McConkey Corley fan, so we're going to talk about those guys and a few of the other guys who've been standing out at the Senior Bowl. Before we talk about all that, it's worth noting that Mike Kafka is likely to stay with the New York Giants this upcoming season. Of course, we know he was one of the finalists, one of the very few finalists for the Seattle Seahawks head coaching job. Had his second interview earlier this week, was listed as a guy to watch, reportedly did a really good job in his interviews. Mike Kafka looked like he might have been on his way out for a head coaching job in Seattle. However, that is no longer the case because the Seattle Seahawks just right before we started recording this hired Mike Macdonald, defensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens, as their next head coach. And so this has two major implications on the New York Giants because first of all, it means Mike Kafka is not going to be leaving for a head coaching job this offseason. But second of all, it means that the Giants' top choice for their defensive coordinator position is now at risk of being promoted to the Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator job. And of course, that is defensive backs coach for the Ravens, Denard Wilson. We've talked about him quite a few times on the channel. If you missed that, go back and check it out. Kind of gave you the rundown on him. And again, we're going to discuss what this means for the Giants in terms of maybe losing Denard Wilson. It's still possible that he chooses to come to the New York Giants, but there's a really strong likelihood that the Ravens will look to promote him to their defensive coordinator job. And as we know, this seems to be the leading man in the race for the New York Giants defensive coordinator job as well. So we're going to react to that quickly before we dive into these wide receivers. But before we do so, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts on the topics down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what is your reaction to this kind of Mike Kafka, Denard Wilson situation?
Well, the Giants kind of got screwed, and that's the god-honest truth. My friends, Seahawks getting McDonald, obviously, it makes it an organic move for Wilson to just jump into that DC role, and he doesn't have to skip a beat. He knows that defense. It's partially his defense, and he has a great offense to pair with it, and he has a chance to win a Super Bowl next year and leverage that into a championship, rather leverage that into a head coaching position in the future. It seems to me the Giants are going to have to look elsewhere, as they usually do. So, right now the Giants are in a spot where they're going to have to pass on a really good candidate. Babbage obviously goes back to Buffalo, becoming that DC over there with the departure of their defensive coordinator, and the Giants are left, picking up the pieces. And, this has been a pretty annoying situation because it seemed to me like Joe Shane wanted to have this whole DC thing figured out by the end of the week. But I don't think that it's going to come to fruition because I don't think just hiring a guy to hire a guy is a good move. They need to find a really good candidate who's going to be a good DC because the truth is simple. Joe Shane doesn't have 3 more years to wait this thing out. He needs to get success. He needs to have success in 2024, if not 2025, if he manages to survive an extra year. So they got to make a good sign. They got to make a good hire, and it has to be someone that can make this defense a lot better in 2024. So, yeah, in my opinion, look, the Giants their backs are against the wall. There's not that many great candidates left. They got to open up the search a little bit more, in my opinion. I think you agree with that. And ultimately, right now, Denard Wilson's looking like more of a pipe dream because why wouldn't he stay in Baltimore if they want to promote him? That's given they want to promote him, but that seamless transition, I don't know why they wouldn't want to promote him based on the fact that their defense was just one of the best, if not the best defense in football.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for the Baltimore Ravens to promote Denard Wilson into that role, and I think there's a very solid chance of that happening, but I will point out that they also have another candidate for that position. I know Art Stapleton mentioned it on Twitter. I'll pull that up because I am blanking on his name, but their defensive line coach, his name is Anthony Weaver. Baltimore Ravens defensive line coach is another one of their in-house options to be promoted into that DC job. So there is still hope for us New York Giants fans who are hoping for Denard Wilson to get the job, but I do want to hit on something else that you said there, Alex, in the sense that I think it's time for the New York Giants to expand their pool of candidates. And I've been saying this probably on like every episode that we've discussed this defensive coordinator search. I haven't been overly impressed with the list of candidates. There's been some intriguing names. Denard Wilson's an exciting one. Shane Bowen is one that I'm not super crazy about. He was defensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans last season. We know how things went in Tennessee, of course, with the firing of Mike Vrabel. I don't really see the allure to Shane Bowen as a retread defensive coordinator here. And a lot of the other names, like Bobby Babich, I liked him, but he got promoted into the Buffalo Bills defensive coordinator job. So just looking around at this list of candidates, if Denard Wilson's not on it, no one truly stands out to me as a really impressive name on the list. So I've been advocating all offseason long for the Giants to add Leslie Frazier to their list of defensive coordinator candidates. I know some Giants fans, for one reason or another, aren't crazy about the name Leslie Frazier. I'm just going to give my pitch for it. He's one of the best coaches in all of football. Everywhere he goes, every time he coaches a defense, it's a top 5 unit in the league. He's very experienced. He runs a nice 4-3 zone coverage system that the New York Giants, their personnel matches up with quite perfectly. Deonte Banks would thrive in a Leslie Frazier defense. I think Kayvon Thibodeau would also thrive in a Leslie Frazier defense. I like the idea of him, but for one reason or another, the New York Giants have not added him to their list of defensive coordinator candidates. So now I wonder if Denard Wilson does get promoted to the Ravens DC job, will they pivot? Will they add some more names to this list and maybe take a look at Leslie Frazier? Personally, I hope so. But again, I know some Giants fans that don't want a retread defensive coordinator, would like a first-time guy, and I understand and respect that opinion as well. But for me, I'd like to see Leslie Frazier at least get an interview, but we'll see what happens. I know that we're kind of all, as Giants fans, holding out hope that Denard Wilson is the guy that they hire. So there's still an opportunity for that to happen again, with the Ravens also having another in-house candidate to make note of in Anthony Weaver. So we'll see. We'll, of course, keep you all updated on the Denard Wilson storyline here and whether or not he ends up coming to the New York Giants or going with the Baltimore Ravens. But let's go ahead and transition to the other half of the conversation that we wanted to have today, Alex, and talk about the Senior Bowl wide receivers. There have been some serious standouts, and one of them that I just want to throw off the bat, Alex, I know that when we finished recording yesterday, we kind of just went back and forth talking about Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. He's one of these 5'11 wide receivers, plays inside and outside. I know he's getting the obvious comparisons to guys like Cooper Kupp and Jordy Nelson because he looks similarly to them, but he's a really good route runner. He plays with a little bit of physicality, and he's great after the catch, and he's been working DBs in one-on-ones for the first couple of days of the Senior Bowl. So, Alex, I'll let you get a chance to kind of dive into Ladd McConkey and kind of share your thoughts on him and how you're feeling about his performance at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, well, Ladd McConkey is certainly one of the guys rising up the boards right now. A lot of people have him pegged as a day 2 pick, second rounder, most likely. His production at Georgia was not something to write home about. Now, Georgia's passing game wasn't insane. It wasn't LSU or whatnot. But Ladd McConkey, I mean, if you just watch him, he gives me vibes of a couple players, right? Cooper Kupp, a little bit of Puka, a little bit of Hunter Renfrow, a little Deontay Johnson. Like, there's a couple of really good players that I feel like he kind of models his game after, or at least he looks like. And that's exciting because, look, in my opinion, if Ladd McConkey went to the Rams today, if the Rams actually needed a Ladd McConkey, he would be a Pro Bowler in his rookie year, right? He is a elite route runner with very good hands, right? Those are two things that the Rams love. And for what it's worth, I think every team should love a great route runners with great hands. The Giants sure as hell need them. Now, is he a little bit undersized? A little bit, but it's nothing crazy. The thing is, from a prototypical standpoint of a receiver, he doesn't have the frame or strength or power of a WR1, right? He's not Malik Neighbors. He's not Devontae Adams. He's not DeAndre Hopkins in his prime. He's a little bit smaller, more agile, shifty. Some may peg him as a slot receiver. But with that being said, I think he could play inside and out. He can do a lot for you, but his ability after the catch is a little bit of an underrated factor of his. He gets the ball, man. He can take off. He can wiggle his way through a couple extra yards. He's not going to fight through tackles, but if he does have a little bit of space, he can make some guys miss, and he can pick up some extra yards on the move there. But his route running, man, it is crisp. If you're playing man coverage against him, you're done. You're dead in the water. You can't guard him. He's unguardable as a man coverage type of receiver. In zone, he finds pockets. He gets skinny. His hands are tremendous. These are the type of guys that excel in a Rams, a McVay offense. He's the type of guy that excels in that type of offense. And I honestly think that the Giants need to be modeling their offense behind a system that gets receivers open, right? Here's a good example for you. One of our best receivers when it comes to yards of separation, Wan'Dale Robinson. He was our most productive receiver this past season during the second half of the year when he came back from that injury in full force. He's constantly open. He's a great route runner, great hands. why not add another piece like that to the puzzle? You know what I mean? Like, why not add another piece that can catch those passes? We don't have a deep passing game because of our offensive line, because of our system. We might as well add more guys that can operate in the short to intermediate range and catch everything that goes their way and pick up yards, pick up first downs. Those quick outs, those slants, like, those digs, like, this is where Lad McConkey shines. On the boundary, his initial moves are just so perfect and clean that if you're a cornerback, you need to be on him. You're going to have to jam him just to throw him off his initial step. But he's so fast to react to those things, it's hard to actually stop him in that regard. So, yes, like I said, on a frame perspective, he's not a prototypical WR1, but in the right system, just like Cooper Kupp is a WR1, just like Puka Nacua is becoming a WR1, I do think in the right system, he could be a really great player and a steal on day 2. My question is, do the Giants have a system that can allow a player like that to be that good? You know what I mean? I think they need to adjust some things. I think they need to have the right quarterback. Matthew Stafford's amazing. Can Daniel Jones make the most of a system like that? Obviously, we haven't seen a lot of it based on the injuries this past season and the offensive line breaking down, even if Daniel Jones is the guy in the future. But, what are your initial thoughts on him? His stock is rising. Everyone's raving about him. As a second-round pick, if the Giants want to go after someone that may not be a prototypical receiver, but he's an elite route runner with really good hands, that might be a guy to consider.
Yeah, so off the bat, I'm just going to say I kind of scoff at the notion that you have to be some 6'2" wide receiver to be a WR1 in the NFL. I don't really see it that way. I mean, even I think Giants fans, looking back on the time where OBJ was here and was a dominant force for the New York Giants, he was 5'11", 200 pounds. You don't have to be a tall wide receiver to be a WR1. You just have to be the best separator on the team to be your team's WR1. And that's where I see where you're coming from with Lad McConkey, how you could see some WR1 upside with him because he is a very good separator. He's always open. Here's some stats that I gauged from my breakdown recently, or my study of Lad McConkey. I watched some film a couple weeks ago. I view him as a strong outside wide receiver, but one of the things that I have as a red flag for him, he only has 19 career contested catch targets, so he's rarely thrown the ball into tight coverage. He only gets the ball when he's open, and that could tell you one of two things. Either A, he's just always open and separating, and so he never has an opportunity to make a contested catch target, or B, he's just not really physical enough to win at the catch point. But I've seen him win at the catch point, and I think that's an important note for Lad McConkey, and we've seen that at the Senior Bowl as well. He's been winning at the catch point. He's got really good, strong hands. Of those 19 career contested catch targets, he caught 10 of them. He caught over half of them, which is really solid. So he's got a nice size and strength profile, catches the ball in traffic, and also had 6.5 yards after catch per reception in 2023. So he gets the ball in his hands, and he makes something happen pretty much every single time, which is a huge trait that the New York Giants, in my opinion, have been lacking in some of their more recent wide receivers. Darius Slayton, you guys know I'm pretty high on him. I think he's one of the most underrated talents in the NFL, in all honesty. But he catches the ball. Every now and then, he'll make a long scamper up the sideline, but he's not really one of those shifty guys that breaks tackles after the catch. I'd like the Giants to have somebody who could get the ball in their hands, get into a compact space, and add a few extra yards after the catch. Lad McConkey does fit the bill. I think he's a day 2 pick. If he's there in the second round, maybe the third round, New York Giants should definitely consider getting him. But again, I think that with the way that he's been performing here at the Senior Bowl, his stock is going up. I think he's going to be more of an early day 2 pick rather than a late day 2 pick. I don't think he's quite rising into the day 1 conversation here because this wide receiver class is so stacked and talented. But Lad McConkey, definitely one of those guys you can see the tools and the traits and see why he would end up being a really good player in the NFL. I think he's got kind of that perfect profile to succeed at the next level. But Alex, let's talk about Brendan Rice next. I don't know if you know this. This is the son of NFL Hall of Fame wide receiver Jerry Rice. And one of the things that Brendan Rice is known for, he was clocked in college at USC at 23.6 miles per hour one time, and consistently in practice clocked in at over 21 miles per hour. So he's big, he's 6'3", 210 pounds, and he's fast. He runs in a straight line faster than most human beings can ever dream of. So he's projected to run a 4.3 second 40-yard dash, but he is an outside wide receiver. This isn't a guy you expect to see in the slot. And similarly to Lad McConkey, didn't have a ton of contested catch targets, and only caught 3 of his 12 in 2023. So not a guy with that size profile of 6'3", 210. You would expect him to be one of those jump ball high point receivers. He's really not. Kind of struggles to catch it in contested catch situations, but he's got great hands. Only 2 drops this past season, 4.3% drop rate. Has a really good release and a nice first step, and we've seen that at the Senior Bowl. We've seen his physicality. I know I mentioned that in college he didn't have a lot of contested catches. He had a really nice one in a one-on-one that I saw on a clip on Twitter at the Senior Bowl, so maybe that's something that he's been working on, increasing his strength at the catch point and hauling in some of those contested targets. So Brendan Rice, Alex, really freakish, athletic kind of player here, son of a Hall of Famer, has some good traits, pretty good route runner, but probably is considered a day 3 or a late day 2 pick right now. Where do you think his stock could continue to rise to if he continues to ball out at the Senior Bowl and maybe does clock in at like a 4.3 at the combine?
Yeah, I mean, look, like you said, the guy is blazing speed. He is physical, but at the catch point has struggled. I'm trying to think of like an NFL comp for him, and I'm having a hard time actually coming up with one. The one guy that comes to my mind is Jacoby Myers, but I don't necessarily think that's the best. He kind of has his own kind of mentality. He has like Kenny Galladay size, but his speed is like Darius Slayton. You know what I mean? It's like it could be even faster than him, honestly. So really physical. I wish he was a little bit better at those 50-50 balls, but truth is I think that he would be really good for maybe like the Bills, replacing a guy like Gabe Davis. You know, he might be someone that would fit that profile, has that speed downfield, might be able to make some catches in traffic, maybe improve upon that and utilize his physicality and his size as a strength. Maybe that would be someone that's cheaper for the Bills to acquire that could open up their offense a little bit, especially downfield, especially because Diggs is kind of like not a factor in their offense sometimes. It's kind of strange. Like he attracts a lot of attention, but then they can kind of get the ball elsewhere. So, looking at Brendan Rice, really solid player. I don't think he's the best fit for the Giants, mainly because we have a lot of speedsters, Slayton, Jalen Hyatt. I don't think we need another guy like this personally. I think we need another guy that just is a tremendous route runner. Not to say that Brendan Rice isn't a great route runner, but I think, a guy I want to talk about in a second, Roman Wilson out of Michigan, may be a little bit better of a fit for us. Even Ladd McConkey, I think, would be a little bit of a better fit because he just gets open quickly. Whereas Brendan Rice, I think, needs a little bit more time. And the Giants, based on our historical needs, we don't have time to give. So, we need guys to get open like this. We don't have 5-6 seconds to wait for guys to get open, wait for guys to get downfield, which is why guys like Slayton and Hyatt sometimes are forgotten. Even though Slayton led our team in receiving yards this past season, I do think that ultimately we need some underneath options, some guys that are just going to move the chains. We have a lot of speed, a lot of go routes. Which I think Brendan Rice will probably. I saw that one highlight of his at the Senior Bowl where he kind of fought through some DPIs to catch that ball in the end zone, which is great. And I'm pretty sure Shea Tierney actually ran across the field to congratulate him after that and give him a nice applause. So definitely something to hit on there. One of the Giants coaches giving him a nice little pat on the back for a really great play. So, keep an eye on that. He probably likes a guy like Brendan Rice. However, with that being said, I do like these a little bit smaller, a little bit more shifty, better route runners. But again, Brendan Rice's upside, I think just as we're talking about Ladd McConkey, there's no reason why he couldn't be a second round pick. It just really matters. It comes down to like a scheme fit. Do the Giants prefer this guy or that guy? I think McConkey, the way he plays, the separation he gains, I would love to see them work with him. I'd love to see like maybe the Giants could utilize him as like a better, maybe like a slightly different version of Cole Beasley. I know Cole Beasley's kind of an inside guy, but I wouldn't be surprised to see McConkey kind of be a little bit of both, like a little bit inside, a little bit out. Maybe they use him like Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I think that could be an interesting way to like, kind of copycat what the Detroit Lions use, the system they use for Amon-Ra St. Brown, the fact that the way they get him across the middle, the way they scheme him open, they put him on the outside, they put him in motion, they drag him across. Like I would copy and paste that exact system and apply it to a guy like Ladd McConkey. But I don't think there's like a lot of examples of like how you could leverage a guy like Brendan Rice, who I think is a little hard to comp. Like, I don't know, what would your NFL comp be for a guy like this? I can't really pinpoint it.
I mean, I don't know if I really have one for Brendan Rice. I'll just say kind of like my overall thoughts and impressions on him, because I think pro comps are so hard to do. But just playing style wise, I think he's kind of one of those straight line burners. I think even the clips that I've seen at the Senior Bowl, I know you mentioned a few nice plays. Shea Tierney seemed to really like him and was hyping him up as well and congratulating him. But some of the clips that I've seen, he does look a little clunky. He doesn't look like he has the most like hip mobility, right? Like just not one of those sink deep and kind of be shifty guys, as opposed to when we're watching these clips from Lad McConkey where he's running these routes and separating with ease and he's just bursting out of his cuts. Like, so there's a little bit of a difference there with Brendan Rice. I think that he's kind of just one of those straight line burners with a big body who's going to need to be coached. That's why I think that he's more of a day 3 guy and more of a project and somebody that the Giants would want to draft and develop. However, he's also got some serious height and size at the position and a whole lot of speed, and teams could do a lot with that. I don't know, maybe like a Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I don't think he's quite 6'3", but he is kind of one of those straight line guys who's super fast. Probably doesn't have the same caliber as hands as Brendan Rice, as we know. MVS has his drop problems. Another player, though, that I want to mention, Alex, I know you said you want to talk about Roman Wilson. I'll let you talk about him in just a second, but I just want to bring up Johnny Wilson out of FSU. This is the player who to me is just a Darren Waller 2.0. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, Alex. He's a 6'6", 6'7" wide receiver. He's just the tallest wide receiver in the NFL. If he goes into the NFL, basically, he would be the tallest at the position. But that's kind of where Darren Waller was at when he got drafted. He got drafted as a wide receiver. He was too big to play wide receiver ultimately. They moved him into tight end. And I do think ultimately that's what will happen with Johnny Wilson as well. He's shown some good traits at the Senior Bowl and at FSU. He's got that big body. He's really fast. And he's got a lot of strength, and he's a good natural pass catcher. But I do think his size is more suited for the tight end spot. So that would be somebody that I think Giants fans should keep an eye on. I'm not sure if he's a day 2 pick, likely day 3, but falling into those final rounds there in the NFL draft, the New York Giants don't have a ton of depth at the tight end spot. I think that you could look at Johnny Wilson as a guy that the Giants draft on day 3 and hope to long-term develop him into a tight end that can maybe succeed Darren Waller. I think that's a possibility. Now, they might just view him as a wide receiver. They might not view him as a draftable guy at all because they don't like his height and they don't like his size, whatever the case might be. But Johnny Wilson, just a guy to keep on your radar. He's been having some solid one-on-one reps. Nice little out route clip that I saw at the Senior Bowl. I had a lot of physicality on it, gained some good separation. So Johnny Wilson out of FSU, another player. I think he's more of a tight end. I know a lot of people share that opinion, but he is a wide receiver. That's where he's listed, and that's where he'll be drafted. But Alex, I'll let you take the reins here and talk about Roman Wilson out of Michigan. I know that he's been turning some heads. I saw that clip where, nasty release, sick out route, had yards of separation. The ball was terribly thrown behind him, underthrown, and he just snagged it with one hand falling out of bounds. Pretty sick rep. Really liked that one, and really like what I've seen from Roman Wilson so far at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, look, that catch was sick. That route was sick. He made Keenan Mitchell, who, Toledo cornerback has been lighting up the Senior Bowl, put him on his hands, man. That ultimately was impressive because Mitchell's been phenomenal. Had an interception today. He's been all over the field, looking really good. Roman Wilson's out of Michigan. Pretty solid player. Had 789 yards receiving last year, 12 touchdown passes, or receptions rather, as a senior. So that's a lot. He had a lot of production in the red zone, and if there's anything the Giants need all the time, it's red zone producers, and this is a guy that kind of has a knack for it. This is a really good route runner. This is a guy who I think ultimately has the capacity to be a solid player in the NFL. Tough. He's 6 foot, 192 pounds, got some good size, good weight to him, really solid hands. He's a leader. A lot of people say, that's one of his biggest traits is the ability to just be vocal and lead. I really like his style. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's perfect in every way. He kind of lacks that spark after the catch sometimes. He's not as shifty as a guy like Lad McConkey would be. Some say he has a limited route tree, but I think there's a lot of room for development there based on the fact that he does have that speed and really good hands. I think there's more to kind of unearth with his potential. But he's another really solid day 2 player, in my opinion. I know another second round guy that I think Roman Wilson could be a nice fit for the Giants. Can do a lot of stuff for you, kind of align in that Z spot. He can align in the slot. Because he's a little bit smaller, though, I am curious to see if he ends up on the outside or if he ends up playing more inside. But he's been lighting up the Senior Bowl. Everyone's talking about him. Just the same with Lad McConkey. This is an interesting player that, if the Giants are looking for a receiver on day 2, there's going to be a lot of them. If they don't want Neighbors, even if they go and get Brock Bowers for what it's worth, they could go receiver day 2 as well. But if they go with a pass rusher, an offensive lineman, or even a trade up for a quarterback and still have a second round pick, there's going to be a crap ton of guys that have at least one elite trait. And you guys know, like, that's my thing at the current moment with evaluating some of these prospects. I like to evaluate a talent and say, this guy has at least one elite trait. Lad McConkey's elite trait is his route running, and he also has elite hands. Roman Wilson, I mean, his route running may not be as good as Lad McConkey, but he's got elite speed, or at least elite game speed, and really good hands. And he's a leader. So there's some intangible value there, too. And guys, truth is, if the Giants lose Saquon Barkley and the Giants lose Xavier McKinney in free agency, we're going to need some damn leaders on this team. So, that's definitely not a bad thing to have if you're a player like Roman Wilson and you're known to be a leader, and the Giants are looking for more guys like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make. I mean, the Giants do need more leaders. I know we discussed that at length in yesterday's episode. The loss of Saquon Barkley, if it does happen, could be even greater than most expect. But let's talk about any of these other wide receivers at the Senior Bowl. Alex, I know that you love yourself some Malachi Corley. I'll give you the opportunity now to go ahead and discuss him. I'll talk about my guy first. I just saw a clip of Xavier Legette at the Senior Bowl. He just lost his defender. It was kind of like one of those fade stops, fake the fade route, and you just curl it. And man, it was sick. The way he sunk his hips, it stopped on a dime, just created so much separation. And that's my thing with Xavier Legette, guys. Like, I know I've been chatting him up quite a bit here on the show and really talking about him a lot. The thing is that he's not one of those big contested catch wide receivers. Like, yes, he's got the size and physicality, and he makes those wow receptions with great body control and losses players. Sure, he does that stuff. But what I'm really impressed by with Xavier Legette is at that size and with that frame, he still sinks those hips. He still makes those cuts and bursts out of his breaks and creates a lot of separation as a route runner. That's why I'm so high on him. I'm very impressed with everything that I've seen from Xavier Legette on his film, and now watching him at the Senior Bowl has been really exciting because he's continuing to play some damn good football down in Mobile, Alabama. And again, I think that he's a player that's going to keep rising up draft boards and be a target for the New York Giants on day 2. But that's my guy, Alex, your guy, Malachi Corley. How's he been looking at the Senior Bowl?
Well, let me just touch on Legette for a second. And I'm thinking about it. Like, I almost don't want the Giants to draft a wide receiver at 6 because of how deep this class is. Like, they might be able to get a guy in the second round with WR1 upside. You know what I mean? Like, passing on Malik Neighbors is going to be tough, or Romeo Dunes. I just don't think I could sit there and tell you, like, let's pass on those guys. I think I'd have to take one of them. But if you're the Giants, you're like, we could get Brock Bowers and Xavier Legette in the second round. I think you do that over just getting Malik Neighbors. Like, you know what I mean? Maybe you go in that direction. Like, you cut Darren Waller, you save $7 million right there, and then more long term because you'd have to extend him if you're going to keep him. You get Brock Bowers, who's a sick player. If you know him, you know how good he is. He might be the best individual player in this draft class at a position, not quarterback. And then you obviously have guys like Xavier Legette, Malachi Corley, Lad McConkey, Roman Wilson in the second round that all have upside to be like legit stars in the NFL. But my guy Malachi Corley, he's been lighting it up. Yes, he has. And I'm here for it. Yes, he is built like a running back, but my guy does not get tackled by arm tackles. You have to be on his knees. You have to be at his feet, dragging him down. He's still going to carry you an extra 5 yards. I freaking love this guy. He's getting a lot of hype. He's kicking ass at the combine, or rather at the Senior Bowl. And right now, like, I'm excited to see how his stock progresses from here, because I think a lot of people probably don't have him in like the top of the first or early second round. I think he's probably a late second round pick right now because of how deep this class is. But someone's going to get a really good player in Malachi Corley in the right system that gives him the ball in space and just lets him go to work. A team, for example, like the 49ers, if Deebo Samuel was leaving this year, he'd be a really good player to get and kind of fill that exact role, get him the ball in space and just let him go. Is he Deebo Samuel? No, obviously not. But he has one elite trait that I love, and it's his contact balance. And by the way, he's no spring chicken when it comes to speed either. He had a run today, I think it was 21 miles an hour or close to it. The guy has blazing speed. So, and his burst, when he catches the ball, he turns it into another gear. You watch him. Go watch his film. The guy gets the ball, and his top speed is like, he clearly has another gear that he only accesses when he needs it. And at the same time, that guy's energy is off the charts. He bounces up after being tackled like he just ran through 7 tacklers, and he just bounces up with so much excitement, celebration, electricity. I kind of love that. Like, that's kind of what the Giants need, someone who's going to be a spark, and everyone's going to rally behind that type of energy. Like, remember OBJ would make a big play, and the Giants would be like, oh, yeah, we're scoring right now, and they would march down the field and score. That's the type of energy that Malachi Corley brings to your offense when he gets up after being tackled, dragging someone 5 yards. that energy is contagious. People feel that, that's called momentum. You know what I mean? You saw it this past weekend with the 49ers. They got some momentum. They started getting hyped, and they couldn't be stopped. That's the type of energy that Malachi brings to your kind of offense. I'm not saying he's going to be a tremendous player. I just love that kind of intangible of his game, is that he just has so much energy to let go, and I think it rubs off on other players. So he's been kicking ass at the Senior Bowl. One of my favorite kind of low-key players. Not many people are talking about right now. But again, Xavier Legette, your guy, is kicking ass. And I can't say right now that I'd be upset if we got him in the second round, because he looks like he could be legit.
Yeah, I also wouldn't be upset by that. That wouldn't upset me at all. That would make me rather happy. One other guy that I do want to mention before we wrap this, Alex, is Tez Walker. We've discussed him a couple times on the channel, not in great detail, but we've touched on him. Tez Walker, I read, had a pretty rough day, so I kind of want to give the good and the bad. We've been talking about all these standouts, Alex, Legette and Corley, these guys who've been standing out at the Senior Bowl, McConkey. But Tez Walker had 4 drops today, apparently, or at least 4 drops in the last 2 days or something. He's been getting a lot of separation, beating guys on these deep vertical routes, which we know that's what he's good at, and we know he's going to do. But apparently he's been dropping passes and hasn't been turning heads, and I read that his body language on the sideline has been rather concerning as well. So this is a guy who, we always talk about players who raise their draft stock at the Senior Bowl. Don't forget, there are guys who see their draft stock fall because of the way that they play at the Senior Bowl. And not only because of the way that they play, but because of the way that they behave. So Tez Walker having bad body language, maybe rubbing some guys the wrong way, that is going to ultimately hurt his draft stock by the end of the draft process. So that's kind of the update there on the Tez Walker truthers who might be tuning into the show. He's not been having his best Senior Bowl. But Alex, that pretty much wraps up the guys that I wanted to discuss. Was there anyone else at the Senior Bowl who's kind of like stood out to you? I read that Bo Nix has been struggling on the quarterback talk. I read that maybe the Giants were kind of piquing some interest in Michael Penix Jr. Saw that there might be some interest there. He's been playing well. So yeah, anybody else that's kind of hit your radar here from the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's been a couple of offensive linemen. There was a tackle that I liked, Fuaga, but I think he's going in the top of the first round, most likely, or at the mid-first round, so we probably won't be in range for him. Honestly, you know what, a guy that's really been sparking my interest? I don't know if he's going to be there in the second round, but the Toledo cornerback I was just discussing before, Quinion Mitchell, he's been awesome. I don't know if he's a first-round talent. I don't know where he's going to go yet. I haven't really seen people talking about his stock, where it's going to land. But if he was there at the top of the second round, again, I don't know. Please correct me if I'm wrong. He could be a first-round talent. But if he's not, and this is a guy that's just rising from a mid-round to like a high date, like a really early second-round pick, that's a guy I would be like, maybe he could be our CB2. You got 2 guys. One's going to be a second-year player, and one's going to be a rookie if you were to get Mitchell as your cornerbacks. It keeps the costs down long term. You get a lot of upside there. It allows you to spend at other positions. It kind of saves you a little bit of money long term. So maybe an option if the Giants were able to get in range of a player like that to fill that CB2 role. They don't go in the direction of a kind of a veteran stopgap with Adoree Jackson leaving. But aside from them, receivers have been standing out. As you mentioned, Bo Nix struggling, had a couple misses. I'm not a big Bo Nix fan. I think he's more of a one-trick pony. I don't think he's that good personally. I wouldn't go down that route. I'd rather have Michael Penix Jr. as a developmental guy for a year. That's just my take. But I'd rather have neither because I want Jaden Daniels. So that's kind of where I stand on the mix. But by the way, I know Jordan Run-On said today or on his podcast that if the Giants had the number 1 overall pick right now, he thinks that they would take Drake May or Jaden Daniels. So we're sparking up Anthony and I's debate here. Jaden versus May. You guys know where I lean. You guys know where Anthony leans. But interesting to see that he doesn't have them taking Caleb. And honestly, I think it probably is not because of his talent, but maybe they don't think he's able to handle being a New York player. So that's kind of the mentality that I'm getting from it. Like, Caleb is more than talented to be the number 1 overall pick. It really is just surviving the New York media. I don't know if he can do that. So, what it's worth, I think Jaden and May are much more equipped in terms of their maturity in that regard. But, we'll see what happens. I still don't think it's probable the Giants move up, but if they did, man, it would be really exciting. It would be definitely all the chips would be on the table in that scenario.
Yeah, and I do want to touch on Jordan Rannon's quote. I'm paraphrasing the quote. He basically said if the Giants had the number 1 overall pick, he believed it would be Jaden Daniels or Drake May as the pick. Again, sparking our narratives. We know Drake May is my QB1, and I'm head over heels for him. We know Jaden Daniels is your QB1, and you're head over heels for him. So we're going to have a lot of fun leading up to the draft, debating those 2 guys for sure. But one thing that I do want to highlight with Jordan Rannon's report or kind of quote, I don't know if it's like an official report, if I would classify it as that, But what I will say is, leading up to the 2023 NFL draft, Jordan Rannon was the one who pegged Deonte Banks as the New York Giants' top prospect that they were targeting. He also mentioned John Michael Schmitz and Jalen Hyatt as guys that they're going to look at on day 2, and they ended up with both of those guys. So if you're talking about beat writers who are plugged in for different aspects, whether I know Pat Leonard's usually pretty plugged in on free agency and who they're looking to sign, Jordan Rannon's usually really plugged in on who they're targeting in the draft. So if he's hearing Drake May and Jaden Daniels and not hearing Caleb Williams, if that's what he's saying on that podcast, there's a reason why he's saying that. And he's kind of telling us that those are the guys that they're looking at for that quarterback spot if they're trading up. And again, he mentioned that he expects them to draft a quarterback. And this guy's plugged in with the draft stuff, guys. Like, Jordan Rannon, I know he's got his critics for sure. Some people love him, some people don't like him, but in terms of NFL draft news for the New York Giants and how much insider information he gets, since this regime has come to town, Joe Schoen and Brian Dable, he's been the guy who's had those inside sources and has been really plugged into the pre-draft processes. So I think there's a lot of weight to be held if he continues to push any type of Jaden Daniels or Drake May narrative. I think that'll be really telling for the New York Giants leading up to the upcoming 2024 NFL draft. So just wanted to highlight that and wrap it up now and say, I'm in the same boat as you, Alex. It's been really fun watching some of these Senior Bowl standouts. We'll, of course, continue to discuss these guys on the channel as the Senior Bowl wears on. I think the final bowl game is this upcoming weekend on Sunday, I believe. Maybe it's Saturday. Not 100% sure. But there's definitely been some standouts. Shea Tierney's there, getting a up-close and personal look at some of these guys. And it's going to be a lot of fun to see who rises, who falls, and who ultimately becomes the New York Giants Senior Bowl pick. Because 2 of their players from last year's draft, John Michael Schmitz namely, and I think Jalen Hyatt was at the Senior Bowl as well. So they do like their Senior Bowl players. The New York Giants do. They always have. So it's going to be fun to continue to break these guys down, Alex. And I'm looking forward to doing more of that right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts on the topics down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Giants.